So we'll zip through the first few slides, which is more the housekeeping homework stuff, and then we'll launch into all the nitty-gritty detail things. So I'll let Audrey kick off.
Sounds good. Hi everyone, nice to see you all again. Just the housekeeping the same as last week, which is really just make sure you're on mute when you're not speaking. That being said, we really encourage you to participate today and to just jump in whenever you do feel like it. So don't feel like you can't interrupt us, because there's quite a bit of content we're going to go through in just a minute. You can select the gallery view in the top right-hand corner to see everyone's faces, although again, we do encourage you to put the video on, especially when you're speaking. We'll have ours on the whole time. Feel free to type questions as well in the chat function if that works better for you. And then just as we mentioned in the first scoping call, the webinars are all recorded. And that being said, if you do say anything in here that you don't feel comfortable it being recorded, we can always edit and remove it. So just let us know and feel free to contribute, and then let us know if you do want to remove something. And these are recorded, but then the seminar, which we'll have in a couple of weeks, won't be. So that's yeah, the logistics around this call.
So what's the focus for today? So some of you might have noticed, if you're very diligent, and that we actually pivoted how we're going to deliver these webinars. So we're still covering the same content, but in a different way, in a way that we feel actually makes more sense and provides you guys with invoking thought and providing strategies that you can start implementing straight away in particular sections. So instead of breaking it up in the way we did previously, today we're going to focus on program, your actual program and what you deliver. And the following one, we're going to look at your organization and then implementation. So we'll bring all of that together and can talk about that at the end, how it all fits together. But today the focus is on your program, and it doesn't matter what type of program you have, but obviously remember everything is within the context. And when we're thinking about gender lens, what does that mean? And in this context, what we're saying is the objective is to increase access to your program for all genders or for a particular gender. And if everyone is okay with this, and please do let us know either through chat or just unmute yourself and let us know. For this context, we are going to mostly stick to the binary genders, right? Male and female. And the reason for this is, through all our research and our work to date, that is what is coming up. But just want to acknowledge that obviously, and we say this all the time, that there are multiple genders. And when we're looking at a gender lens, we need to consider not just all the genders, but intersectionality as well when you think about race, religion, culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation. And did you
I just wanted to say great. Jen,
did you want to say anything?
No, sorry, because my connection was not good, so I'm trying to log in again. So no, I didn't want to say anything. Sorry.
No, never apologize. And please, one of the things we want to say is please interrupt and please jump in. Like this session, we want it to be as interactive as possible. I am not a very polite person. And so I say this to Audrey as well, and Audrey will just jump in. So you're more than welcome to just unmute yourself. We've got the eye on the screen and you can just jump in.
And on that point, I just wanted to welcome Kamal and Kazi as well to the call. We just saw that you joined. We're just kicking off just talking about the focus, which is the program, the objective, which is how to increase the accessibility of your program and your services and products to different genders, and then the outcomes for today, which is just how to apply a gender lens to your programs more specifically, and then what are some key strategies that we can discuss for you to go and take back to your programs and implement. Amazing. So the agenda for today, we're just going to do an intro, and then we will look at the process that we've used to identify issues and create strategies, because although we're going to go through specific issues and specific strategies in today's call, this is a process that you can use to diagnose issues in your program outside of the ones that will be discussed today, which is really exciting. Then we'll be defining the key elements that make up the life cycle of a program that we run in accelerators and incubators, and looking at what strategies we can implement for the different phases of what constitutes a program. And then we'll have a small group discussion around what you are hoping to achieve through your program, and if you've identified specific issues that you'd like to discuss, or if anything we've discussed in today's call has sparked an interest and curiosity and you'd want to discuss that further, and yeah, and then we'll just close and have the next steps.
And just to reiterate again, we are going to be covering a lot of things, and of course you're going to have access to these slides, but we are going to go through things really, really quickly because we want you to be able to interact with us and see the breadth of the issues, but know that if there's anything that you want to deep dive into and work through, especially in relation to your work, that's when the opportunities for the one-on-ones come in, as well as the seminars. So if anything does come up and you're like, that's really interesting, you don't particularly want to contribute at that point, that's fine, just make a note of it, and then we can bring it out in the group discussion. So what is your gender objective? Now, this is something really, really interesting and important for everyone to consider, and some of you might have considered it, right? And I was considering whether to actually put gender in the objective, but in this context, let's think about this as your objective around gender. And as we've always said, we want you to consider your organization and your program and your ecosystem, because that thread has to weave through the whole thing. But today, we're going to focus on your program. So when you're looking at the objective around gender, it can fall under 4 main areas. Okay, so you might have a quota for your objective. And an example of a quota is you will say 50% of women entrepreneurs have to be in each cohort. Or you can have a mandate. You can say that in each cohort, we want to ensure that the entrepreneurs that come in, someone on their founding team is a woman. That's a mandate. Or within your organization and your program, you can consider this. You can say, we'll consider the gender of the founder, but it might not determine whether they are accepted or not. And I don't think any of us on this call fall into the 4th one, which is none. You don't have any gender objective. And a lot of organizations do this. So this is something, do consider it, because it will impact on how you develop the strategies. And just to reiterate again, the objective today is looking at how can we increase access to our programs for all genders, right? And then we look at what does applying a gender lens mean? We mentioned intersectionality as well. So this is a really interesting way to look at it. We've always talked about power dynamics and power, privilege, and bias. I'm going to take a step back now and go, let's look at a gender lens in exactly that way, right? When you are looking at something, say you're looking at your recruitment process, what we are going to do through this webinar is actually put the lens on of a man or a male, someone who identifies as a male, and go, how are they looking at this? And then we're going to put the lens on as a female. And again, remember, for this context, we're going to stay binary. Any objections or any additions, please let us know, and we'll do our best to accommodate. And we're actually going to use those lenses to go, okay, how are these different genders seeing things in different ways, which is limiting them from applying to the program, right? So that's kind of how we're going to do it, and it'll make more sense as we go through it. So a quick thing on how we have created this. There's 2 quick slides on how we've identified the issues. So issues are, what is the problem that is causing a lack of access to your program by women, for example, right? So the first step in the process of understanding what these issues are is to understand your objective. Is your objective, if your objective is to get 50% females into your program, and that's your objective, right? It's a quota, that's your objective. And then you can ask, well, how is this objective not being met? What is the key problem driving it? Then you can look at the different elements, which we're going to do. So within your program, we're going to look at 3 elements. And then you're going to go, okay, I'm going to apply a gender lens to say, why aren't females applying to our program? Really quick process that we're going through. And then how do you actually identify the strategies? Really simple. I'm sure all of you may or may not have actually created strategies before, but again, always related back to the objective. So if the objective is to get 50% women into your program, that always align with that. And when we're creating strategies, and the strategies you'll see through this webinar, we encourage you that if you're going to adopt one of these, test them with your target. If your target is women entrepreneurs, test it really, really quickly. Speak to them, talk to them, ask them what they think. and do a really lean test. Don't run an entire program or change something really quickly without testing it really quickly. And the type of strategies we're going to discuss with you, this is a really broad way of looking at it, but they can either be really easy, and really easy is low resource, low time. So approximately maybe 1 to 3 months to apply, or they can be quite complex and deep. So they'll require high resource, like you might need to allocate significant funding to it and commit a certain, more time to it and commit another resource to it to do it. When we were doing this, we were like, okay, should we start ranking these? And we went, you know what? We shouldn't rank these at all of what's easy and what's complex. And it goes back to the concept we were talking about in Singapore, that one size will not fit all. And this is a classic example. It really depends on you as the person who's receiving this information, what your program looks like, what stage your organization is at, where your priorities are, right? And so we would love for you, if some strategies are coming to you through this that you want to do, it'd be great to see the variety of who thinks these are easy and who doesn't, because it's really very contextual. Anything to add? No? Great. That's it. That's all the housekeeping. So now we're going to get started. So now is the really exciting part. So we're going to look at what your program may contain. And we acknowledge that everyone on this call has very different programs, and that's absolutely fine. We've been doing a lot of research and speaking to a lot of other intermediaries, including some of you on the call. And these are the most, I guess, key elements of a program, and you may have them in different formats. So the first element of the program we're going to look at is recruitment of entrepreneurs and the selection process. The second part is program design and delivery. The third one is access to funding. And then hoping to get from you, what haven't we considered, right? This is where we'd love to hear from you as to are there components of your particular program that aren't in here. So feel free to jump in and unmute and contribute at this point if you'd like to.
Amazing. So we sent you through the Slack channel and by email some preparation for today that I'm hoping you got a chance to do, but it's completely okay if you ran out of time and this is the first time you're kind of seeing it. And we were just asking you to think about what issues you are currently facing relating to gender and power within your program. And again, that can be throughout the whole life cycle of the program, as Manita just mentioned, starting from recruitment, like marketing, advertising, all the way to post-program support, which can be with your alumni or how you help them to access funding. So it can be throughout any of those steps. And we're just about to go through all of those steps and details with strategies. But we just wanted to give you an opportunity to share, if you have had time to prepare for today, what are some of the issues that you're currently facing. And we had put four different, I guess, strategies, objectives in our email, which was to attract more female entrepreneurs, removing gender bias in the delivery of your program, incorporating a gender lens within your curriculum, and removing bias with all of the stakeholders, including your mentors and funders. But we'd love to hear from you now. Are there specific issues that you've been trying to tackle for a while that have just kind of gained momentum at the moment that you'd like to address throughout this webinar, throughout this whole, I guess, thematic? I'll leave it with you if you wanted to share.
And Komal's joined as well. Hi, Komal.
Hi.
So Agnia, I know you said you were interested in contributing, so would love to hear from you as well. Maybe you go first.
Okay, sure. So I think for the part where where we are the first one where we're trying to attract more female entrepreneurs. So since we did recently a project with the government, I mean, it was a women-centric incubator. So one thing that we looked at was creating a physical space that specifically caters to women. For example, we had a childcare center at the space. So that was something that attracted a lot of women. And again, we kept flexible timings because we knew there were few mothers who, I mean, after we selected the cohort, So that was something that really, again, was helpful. And then one thing that we faced as a challenge was mobility. I mean, again, since gender, again, it's about both the genders, but then I'm talking about experience of working recently, right? Before the 6-month project, we did had, I mean, our incubator generally is for, I mean, it's not women centric, but then this one, that the recent project that we did as a consultancy, in that we really, I mean, we faced the problem where women weren't able to, because the space was a little, it wasn't in the central city. So so commuting problems, mobility was one of the issue, and that I mean, that was something that was very crucial. Yeah, and for the program, I mean, do I have time to talk about all the four points, or just one point right now?
No, go for it. I think it'll be interesting to hear it, and then we can incorporate it.
Okay, sure. Then yeah, one in the curriculum design one, I think we sort of we try to first understand the needs, and then we went on creating a women-centric program where, you know, we also, because it has been no, I mean, there are few reports that say that women have, I mean, we've seen it also, that they lack confidence. I mean, there needs to be developed negotiation skills. So we went on the main program. Alongside that, we also looked at developing soft skills, and personal development component was there. And then, for example, we had sisterhood sessions, fireside chats with successful women entrepreneurs. They came, and men entrepreneurs. And so one thing that really helped was one-on-one sessions as well. And again, I was discussing this with my team as well, and then we had another point where we saw that, you know, even if we look at men also in our society, for example, they're expected to earn, and, you know, because most of the startups are at early stage and there are young men coming in. So something that would, in program curriculum or design, I mean, if we can financially facilitate them, and so they can contribute back at their home as well, that might also be something that we could work on. So yeah, and again, gender sensitization workshops could be there. But yeah, so yes, these were a few points that I think I discussed it with my team as well yesterday. So yeah, we came up with these, and then, I mean, sisterhood sessions was really helpful in developing the one-on-one thing, in which they could, I mean, they came up with their challenges. I mean, they could talk freely. So yeah, so again, designing the curriculum according to, you know, the needs of the people, and understanding them, empathizing with them. So yeah, so that's something that we
Thank
have.
you. Anyone else?
Hi, this is Ragini. So,
Ragini.
hi. So, I think one of the things that we've been talking about while trying to incorporate gender lens is, how do we incorporate it into our existing programs? Because we've been thinking about it quite seriously, at least for the past 2 months, as we plan for the next financial year. And as we think about it, we're going more and more towards running completely independent programs that are focused on women. And I mean, I'm sure that's great, and that's something that we should do. But I think we're still struggling to sort of incorporate it into our existing mainstream programs. So I think for me, I'm just trying to understand, how do we, in our existing incubation program, when on, you know, both male and female entrepreneurs are sort of pitching for the same few spots of incubation that we have within a limited cohort. How do we gender sensitize over there versus running independent programs for women entrepreneurs? I don't think we've cracked that yet, and it'll be great to hear how we might be able to do that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, and we'll touch on that as well. And Ragini, let's bring that back into the group discussion once we've gone through all of this in a bit more detail, and it might spark some ideas, but we do talk about that.
Sure.
Right.
Okay, hi, this is Sankalita. Just to also extend what Ragini said, for example, we are now having our current cohort of impactors, our top 10 people that we've chosen from the cohort. And out of that teams, only 2 of them have female founders. I mean, we were, of course, not focusing on getting women founders, or we were not focusing otherwise. We were focusing, of course, on the ventures and what they have to offer. But it's just an indication of how, how many women do get into ventures. So again, mindfully applying that gender lens is something I think that we should probably be looking at in the coming months. And also I would like to know a little about how we can incorporate the gender lens in the curriculum, the point that you have mentioned there. And because that's something that is also I think missing from our curriculum at the moment. And I would like to be able to incorporate it. The D point that you've mentioned about removing bias with mentors is one other area that I feel that we do not get enough of them, because when you're talking about external mentors and subject matter experts that come in and work with our ventures, I think it's also because when you're talking about external subject matter experts, these people have already got other commitments. They're either in a full-time job or have ventures of their own. And if they're women, then to take out further time for mentoring is not possible, because then they just go back to their families. So we do, I think at the moment we do not have any women external subject matter experts. So not because they don't want to, but I think it's the time, they can't balance the time, extra time that would be required for giving to this. So yeah, these are the areas that I think I would like to focus on.
Great. Thanks, Shankalita. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Agnia.
Hi, Agnia.
Yeah. So I want to share for SIAP, especially this year, we are currently focusing on. Currently, we are collaborating with British Council, and for this year, our program is focusing to women entrepreneurs also. So maybe I really want to focus on how to attract more female entrepreneurs to our program, especially this year. We are planning to expand our program to several other cities that I think there will be less women entrepreneurs in those areas. So how can we create a marketing or exposure to attract them, and how can we also adopt curriculum that is suitable for women entrepreneurs? I think that is my issue.
Great. We'll definitely discuss that in detail.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And we'll discuss, obviously, these are like, I think that we'll be talking about strategies in a second, but obviously to then contextualize them and make sure that they apply to your program, that's when the one-on-ones, the seminars, go even more depth to how you can apply it to you and how you can use it in your environment. So
it's really hard to hear you, Audrey. Sorry.
That's all right. Is that better? Is this better?
Heaps better.
Okay, amazing. So I was just mentioning that we'll go through a certain level of depth today, and hopefully you'll be able to come out of today's webinar with a few strategies already that you can try from all these areas that you're interested in. But if not, we can also dive even deeper into how that can be contextualized to your world in the one-on-one sessions or in the seminars as well. So there's just different ways that you can get that input for all of the amazing things you just mentioned.
Clearly, I have a louder voice because I have 2 young children that I'm constantly trying to direct to be better humans. So there you go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Just a quick minute to invite anyone else. We have got time for this, and then we've got time for this at the end as well. Brilliant. Okay, we'll keep moving. And if you do, again, invitation, if you do want to contribute, ask a question, you're more than welcome to. Just because Audrey and I are presenting It doesn't mean that we are owning the whole thing. So please do contribute at any point in time. And you can also write some comments in as well, and we can follow that up. Great. So let's start with the first one, which is the recruitment of entrepreneurs. And there's four main things, and all of you kind of touched on this. All of you who just spoke touched a little bit on all of these four things, which is great. So we're going to go a little bit deeper. So what are the kind of things we need to consider when we are recruiting entrepreneurs? The first thing we're going to look at is marketing and advertising of your program. The second one is how can you improve access to your program for men and for women founders? The third one is that we're going to look at your application process and your selection process. And again, I am going to go through these really quickly, just so we can cover them all. So marketing and advertising. This is a really, really important part, right? Because this is the first time your potential entrepreneurs and founders are seeing your work and they're getting attracted by it. And it's really important for you as well because it gives your program value, right? The strength of your entrepreneurs equals the strength of your program and your brand. So it's really important to get this part right. And you need to, when you're looking at trying to attract, say, more female entrepreneurs, the first step is to actually get them to apply, right? That's what we've seen. Because if they don't actually apply to your program, you're not going to be able to select them. So a key part of it is let's consider how we can increase the gender diversity in the application pool, right? And so some of the things that we can ask ourselves is how is your program actually advertised? And what channels are you using to advertise? Are you using social media? Are you using posters? Are you doing boot camps? And then have a think about what's actually contained in your marketing collateral. So if it is on your website, what images are you using? What kind of language are you using? When you put the lens of a male or a female founder, how are they interpreting the images that you're showing? How does your organization's website appear, right? When you have your leadership team, it's a known fact that when anyone goes to anyone's website, they click on About Us and your team. You know, what's the gender diversity of your leadership team? And what story is that telling to applicants? So when we consider all of these questions, you should be starting to think about, you know, there's so many different aspects, and there is. And what are some of the strategies that you can do to improve, you know, how can we improve our marketing and advertising? And we are doing this continuously as well. So with your marketing collateral, consider the images that you're using, yeah? And sometimes we tend to use stock images, which can look really amazing. But what we have found is often people are attracted to people that look like themselves. So one of the things we've tried to do is make sure that there's not just gender diversity in the images that we're using, but we're also showing, you know, pictures of women and men who are the men and women in our communities that we're trying to attract. And they're representative of the cultures as well as diversities. And then also we're very deliberate about our language that we use. And you can be quite explicit. So we're during all our recruitment of staff members as well as of entrepreneurs, we have in our position descriptions, for example, as well as when we're recruiting, we make it really explicit that we encourage all genders to apply. And we want to speak to you about that, and we encourage women to apply. So you can have clear statements inviting people to apply. And it actually makes a significant difference, because what we found is people who come into our program say that's one of the reasons they've applied, because we've openly said that. And the second thing to consider is channels. Like, what channels are you actually using to advertise your program? And consider that not all channels are available to all genders, depending on the communities that you're in. For example, you know, if you only have digital marketing, consider that maybe the women in the communities you're targeting don't have, even though their family might have access to the internet and the computer, it's not logical, or it's not accepted that they use that, right? It doesn't hinder their entrepreneurial spirit or the fact that they've got a venture, but they don't have access to it. So consider maybe having some print media or posters in areas where they can actually see this and know about your program. In some cases, some of you might be doing this already, and we do this a lot in Kenya, and we're testing this in Australia actually, which is running roadshows and community events and bringing other organizations who are linked to the founders that you're working in, because they will be tapped into a bigger pool. It'll build your brand. It'll bring a richer number of people into the actual roadshows and workshops. The third one is advisory boards, and we've done this really well in Bangladesh. So for all the Bangladesh intermediaries on the line at the moment, it's not easy to do. So for us, this comes as a more difficult one, but we've put in a lot of effort into this. Advisory boards with some of the top women entrepreneurs in the region and the country is so powerful if you can get them, because not only do they end up by virtue becoming mentors to your entrepreneurs, it's great marketing, right? Because if you can have them on your website and say, this is our advisory board, women who are applying go, wow, I want to do that because I know who that person is. And we always operate on that principle of you can't be what you can't see. If they're the ones who are your advisory board, and you can call them, call that advisory board whatever works. If they're there and they're visible, it's a natural attraction to your program. And we tested this in Bangladesh and it worked really, really well. The next one, some of you talked about, is mentors and facilitators. And again, it is quite difficult to attract mentors and facilitators that are gender diverse for some of the reasons that have already been stated. And, I find this difficult as well when I get asked to support other people. I'm like, between work and kids, where am I going to find that time? And we encourage you to just be really deliberate about that. Be really deliberate about getting mentors and facilitators of different genders and expertise, because the value that they can bring is really, really important. But again, a very great marketing tool. And the last one, some of you talked about, again, this is probably in the more difficult basket for most of you, but maybe not, is create a female-only program and pitch it only as a female-only program. And we did this. So we went through running quite a few of our programs without gender segregation, and then we created a female-only program that was supported by the advisory board. So that's also something that you can do.
I'll just add, in terms of the marketing, something we've found is to have things available in the local languages as well, just because even if English is quite common, it can be the case that entrepreneurs actually skim English. Like, even if they're familiar with it, well, they'll just skim read a lot of the material versus really being engaged if it's in their local language. So just to consider how language, both the words that you use, but also the actual using some of the local languages where you work, can make a difference in the engagement and people actually taking in the information that you're trying to put out there.
Right. So the next one we would like to talk about is improving access for all genders. And what do we mean by that? So when you look at the different gendered groups in the communities that you work in, it's very likely, and this is a generalization, but this is what we have found speaking to people and working in emerging markets, is women entrepreneurs in general will have a lower skill set, lower access to education, less strong networks by the time they apply to the program compared to their male counterparts. So how can you create access to these women if your criteria, for example, eliminates them straight away, or they're perceived to be eliminated from their point of view as well? And this is, I'd love to hear from you to see if this is actually an issue that you've considered, but this is something we find as well. So what are some strategies to create that access for all genders? The first one is analysis. Really look into your communities and your segments and work out why are certain genders not either applying for the program or they don't seem fit for the program. And this is actually looking at it in reverse, right? So you might get female and male applicants. The ones you're actually selecting, that's fine. Go and look at the ones you're not selecting and why didn't you select them? And sometimes they might not have the same quality of their venture, or you might find that the criteria is what is preventing them from you guys actually selecting them. So really deep dive into that and say, is this because they're not the right venture, or that the founder is not good enough, or is this our criteria that is preventing them from applying?
And I think going to a deeper level of analysis is that if they are not at the right stage, because as an accelerator or incubator, you want to really be able to focus all your activities around supporting founders that are at a certain stage of growth, because you can't accelerate something that's at zero. So you need them to be moving at a certain stage to really be able to deliver the most value, but also for the founders to be able to receive the most value from your program. So if they're not the right fit because they're not at the right stage, then it's going deeper and saying, why are they not at the right stage? And if you see that most of the female founders or applications you get are not at the right stage, then why? Is it because they don't have the same access to education opportunities? Is it that at the moment the infrastructure in the ecosystem or Riley is not supporting them? So really digging a bit deeper to understand why you're not getting that gender diversity and quality in your talent pool that's applying, and so meaning that you can't actually select them then for your program.
And this leads really nicely into the next one, which is, one of the things you can consider is if their skill sets and the quality and the stage of their venture isn't ready, maybe consider either partnering with a pre-accelerator program in your community, which is what we are about to test with one of our programs, or you can create one, right? Or you can partner with some community organizations that provide this support. Sure, you might not be able to go and improve the education system in the regions that you work in, so all females, for example, have the same level of education, but you can provide some additional support during a pre-accelerated type program, or with community programs, community groups that support these women to get them to the stage that they're ready for your program. Or the third one, you can create a pre-accelerator program within your program, right? And again, this is something we are considering doing for some of our communities that we work in, because we're finding that some of these women are absolutely fantastic. They just have less access to all the support that some of the other entrepreneurs have by the time they even enter our early stage program. For us, when we're looking at it, it is quite resource intensive, and it's a different skill set as well. So, and timing. So that it's something that you can consider, but it's an add-on to your program. And the last one is something we're testing as well, which is having a weighted criteria to apply different strengths to show through, right? So, for example, you might have a founder who has very little business acumen or financial understanding, and you can see this in their application form. But perhaps when you are speaking to them, they're an incredibly strong founder, and when you're speaking to them that they have that potential to do it. So consider when you have the criteria that they apply to weight that stronger than the financial one to allow them to come in, right? If you don't have the criteria, it might be that mandate we're talking about, saying that, okay, we don't exactly have a weighted criteria, but let's consider this and test this.
Yeah, and I think just going back to the pre-program as well, it can be a whole pre-program, which is a lot more resource intensive, but it can also be a few sessions beforehand. So for entrepreneurs, for example, our female run and female founder program in the Pacific, financial acumen is lacking. And one way we're going to test that is can we actually do a few sessions ahead of time? And this is when you can also maybe do sessions about confidence. If it is going to be a mixed program, maybe you can have some of those sessions that are more geared towards enabling the women to have similar access to your content during the program by holding those sessions and giving them sessions around confidence or negotiations and all those types of things ahead of time as well. So it can be something you can test in a less labor and resource intensive way than establishing a whole pre-accelerator, which can take more time.
The next one is the application process, and this is a really interesting one. And those of you, and I think pretty much all of you were there in Singapore, we talked about this, right? And it's something we don't really consider. How is your application process privileging certain gendered groups, right? And it's a really interesting one, because if most of us in that room in Singapore all had digital application processes. And immediately you think, okay, well, what if an entrepreneur doesn't have access to the internet, doesn't know how to use the internet, but is still a really strong entrepreneur? And we had this in Bangladesh, actually. You know, we actually didn't get these applications until we were really deliberate about that. So we really need to look at how we are actually creating an application process that's welcoming of different genders and also different marginalized groups. So one of the things to consider is, what is the best form of application that can be used for the segments you're targeting? And again, if we go back to that first example, if your objective is to get 50% female entrepreneurs, are females in the communities that you are targeting, are they going to apply using a digital form? If not, can you provide varied forms? When we were working in India on another project, we found that the best way to access women is to work with the local shops, right? Because they all went there. So we partnered with the local shops and we put our application forms in those shops, and we trained the shopkeeper on how to communicate that. So that's something you can test as well. It's a little change to what you're doing. And then also help them apply. Like sometimes our application forms make so much sense to us, and because we are so into our program, but someone who's looking at it, who might be a brilliant entrepreneur but has never been asked to articulate in that way, that might be a big deterrent for a lot of people. Again, it's really great if you can to state very clearly that you're encouraging all genders to apply, and that you actually embrace as an organization equality and diversity. Use the terms that are relevant in your context, and use the language that is relevant in your context. Like, this is what we use, but please don't just cut and paste. It might not work in your one. But when someone looks at that and they see that, that's going to trigger a very different response to if it's just a blank application process. And again, we talked a little bit about this, but language really matters. So be really careful in the language that you use in how you're framing things. Understand that in some communities, if female founders, for example, don't have the same access to education, some terminology that you use might easily prevent them. They might be looking at that going, I don't even understand what this means, I'm not going to apply, right? The reality is they might not need to understand what specific words mean. So, and we are very deliberate about using plain English when we're communicating. A lot of our team members aren't English speaking, so we're constantly checking this as well. And then criteria, and the number of criteria is really, really important. This is across corporate and social enterprise, and we found this speaking to some of our research people as well, which is the bigger number of criteria you have is a natural deterrent for female entrepreneurs, for female candidates, right? Because females in general, this came up even yesterday, they tend to want to meet every criteria, and they need to feel like they're 100% in everything before they apply. Usually, this is a generalization. A male founder will go, oh, I'm 3 out of 5, but I'm pretty good, so I'm going to put that application in. And this is a generalization, so it doesn't apply to everyone, but that is what we see, and that's something that you might want to consider as well. So then you've got your application process and some things to consider, and then we look at how are you actually selecting these entrepreneurs. And it's really important that your selection process doesn't privilege who's coming into your program. If your objective is to have access for all genders or a particular gender for a particular program, let's look at the selection process now. So some of the issues that we might be seeing is that we tend to have a lot of unconscious bias when we're looking at the pool of applicants, and you might be favoring a male founder over a female founder for a number of reasons, right? You might have a greater pool of male founders. You might be more used to working with them. And a really good thing to consider is, do you want to apply the same selection process to different genders? I had a conversation with a funder the other day who said, it's really easy for me to fund someone who pitches really, really well. And I encourage her to think about the fact that, you know, naturally some people don't pitch well, but that doesn't actually determine the strength of their venture in many cases. So what can we actually do to encourage people who are selecting ventures and selecting enterprises to think differently? So think about also the assumptions of your selection panel, right? And think about how those assumptions of your selection panel is going to influence who's coming into your program. So some of the strategies that we'd love for you to think about is review your selection criteria. Try to remove any bias against any gender. So what do we mean by this? You can have some criteria around education, right? What is your level of education, or what degrees do you have? And how about we reframe that to say, we would love to know your background before coming into the program. So they might not have gone to university or had a degree in anything or even finished school, but they might actually talk about their experiences into what came into the program. So that's something that we can do to encourage people who might not have access to education because of their gender in the community, to encourage them to apply. Then we go into the selection panel. And again, those of you who are in Singapore and remember what I said is, sometimes it happens that your selection panel is completely not diverse. And unless you're really deliberate about looking at that, what we had at one point is I had 3 of my wonderful team members, but all 3 of the selection panel were guys, and none of them were in the countries that we were selecting for, right? And that was the first stage. So we really called that out, saying we can't do this anymore. You have to really be deliberate about who's on the selection panel. The third thing you can do is incorporate blind selections. And we talked a little bit about this before, which is, you know, de-identify your applications once you are looking at them. So try and remove the names and try and remove the he and she and anything within the application form. And you can use volunteers and interns to do that. Or if you have access to this and access to funding for it, there are software programs available that you can put your applications through to remove any gender bias, right? And we can talk about this with you later and give you some links as well. Also consider your interview questions and the format to provide equal opportunity. The timing of when you're going to do interviews, if you do interviews, is really important. If you have female entrepreneurs, as how some of you alluded to, you know, they might have young children to look after or elderly parents that they're caring for, elderly people in their lives. So consider the timing of the interviews. How can you encourage them by creating a time that is suitable for them rather than that's just suitable for you? And then also creating the space during the interviews for their real venture to come out and their real strengths to come out. We, for example, we're very deliberate about doing multiple interviews if necessary, right? Often first interviews, people are nervous and they'll just talk about their technicalities. Especially, we found this with some of our female entrepreneurs and female candidates. So how do you change that to create more of a conversation and more of a safe space for them to contribute? Again, knowing not everyone's going to pitch as well as each other. The next part we're going to look at, so that completes recruitment of entrepreneurs. And the next part we're going to go through is program design and delivery. So what are the key things we'd love for us to consider during program design and delivery? Some of you touched on this just before, which is fantastic, which is program logistics and location, program content, program delivery, and facilitators and mentors. So location and logistics. So again, what was raised before is things we've experienced as well. Sometimes the location of your program, and that might be a digital program, right? Or it might be a 5-day intensive program that we have that is away from the main city. And the logistics involved with accessing it can prevent, and again, I'm being binary in this case, female entrepreneurs to apply. Why? A lot of female entrepreneurs that we've worked with are mothers of 1 or more children. They're the primary caregiver to them, and plus they're looking after the elderly family members in their community. So for them to think about going to a program that is a 5-day intensive away from their family, they can do that for their venture. They know exactly how to do it. But if they're away from that, that's a real consideration. And immediately that might stop people from applying. And the other thing to consider is the logistics, right? Like if your program is held during the morning, afternoon, evening, or it's a day program, a lot of female entrepreneurs from the communities that we work in have or continue to face violence, harassment, and in many shapes and forms, and we won't go into that. But that might mean that traveling at night is a real issue, or them being that you might start during the day, but you finish in the evenings. So their family won't want them to commute back in the evening. So that might stop them, and they know that. And these are some of the things to consider as well. If you have costs associated with your program or a cost associated with attending your program, this might be a big deterrent because particular genders might not be the income earner in their family, or they might not have control of the finances, which is what we're seeing in the Pacific as well. Any income generated by a female entrepreneur, it's seen as a communal pool for the community. So think about all of that as well.
And Kamal, I think that was really great when you mentioned your strategy that you're looking at that financial contribution to actually help them to take the time out to be able to attend the program and bring something back as well to their family and community. So that's the first time we've heard of that one, and it sounds like quite a great strategy.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what are some of the things that we can consider? Understand the competing demands of your entrepreneurs from different genders. Ask the alumni who did go through the program what challenges they faced. Invite questions in the application forms, and invite people to give you a call personally to discuss this with you. We offer partial travel scholarships when we can, depending on our funding, to encourage people to apply, because that is something that they've told us will make it easier for them to actually come. And consider the location and how they can deter your entrepreneurs. I'm going to use an example in Dhaka, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're finding increasingly, even for our Why Her program in Bangladesh, we run the program about 2 hours away from Dhaka, and even though it's female run, female facilitated, everyone is female. The bus driver wasn't who took us there, but that didn't seem to bother anyone. But even then, the female entrepreneurs were telling us it's just too difficult for us to go that far away from Dhaka to do it. We loved the location, but it was really difficult for us to make that decision. So really consider the location. In Dhaka, for example, we found the traffic was really, really bad. And then the time of year can really impact that. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, that's the same thing in the Pacific. When we ran our last program, there was 13 entrepreneurs and 11 were young mothers, very, very young mothers that were still breastfeeding, that were still in the very early stages of being, a lot of them first-time mothers, and some of them did bring their children and their babies to our whole live-in program, and some of them had their partners come with them and stay in a separate location, and this way they also had support in the evening as well through this learning experience. So yeah, it's just considering the location makes a big difference to not only them being able to access and be there, but then being able to focus and taking it.
And then one of the things we can also consider is, can you redesign your program or offer alternative programs? So if an intensive 5-day program where you're away from your family isn't suitable, what else can you do? You might not have a live-in program, but where you're actually locating your programs and running your programs, that might be inhibiting. So can you actually have a roaming program, which is what we found with one of the people that we interviewed, to make it accessible. So not everyone has to come for 4 months in a row to the same location, but the location actually changes to make it easier for some of the applicants. So there's some of the things you can consider with location and logistics as well. And then we look at the program content. So this is where a few of you have mentioned that how can you actually incorporate looking at gender within your content and within your curriculum. And we can't go into that too detail, but that is something we are looking at doing as well, and we can talk about that as well. But one thing to consider with the content is really consider how different genders will receive the information that you're delivering and how they're going to learn. Again, if you consider a lot of the female entrepreneurs might not have the same access to education or have competing demands in their minds, right? So if you're somewhere and they know they have to go home and look after the children, or they're constantly on their phone making sure that everything else is okay, consider this within your program content and how it's delivered, and perhaps make time during the content, and we talk about delivery later, for people like your female entrepreneurs or any genders who might have competing demands, to create that space so they're not feeling like they can't fulfill their other obligations as well. Sometimes one of the things you can consider is there parallel programs that you can create that might provide a better learning environment for different genders and how they actually learn within your communities. And also, and we talk about this a lot, but what is the actual support and education level or knowledge level of the entrepreneurs who are coming into your program? So when we consider some of the strategies of how we can improve the program content, this is something I guess everyone on the call and some of you have mentioned is, include some content to address gender and power issues. When we were in Singapore, you saw that I was really lucky. I had 2 half-an-hour sessions and 1.5-hour session to discuss issues around gender and power to all of you, right? That was not the format that I was given, in the sense that there was a lot of theory that came into, we were partnering with Criterion 4. When I looked at that, I'm like, that is not how we can communicate that to make it easy to learn. So one of the things we did together was, how can we design it to make it something that's actually understandable for the audience, so for your entrepreneurs, and in this case for you guys, and use the principles of facilitation to make that more tangible, right? So if you saw the sort of 50-page document that we had, that's not what was delivered. It was delivered in a different style. So really think about including this into your program content, and we're doing this. We're testing this with the YGAP curriculum at the moment as well.
And I think Kamal, you also mentioned the confidence negotiation system sessions that you run, which is really great, and we've heard that a lot for our research as well, and that's things that we're incorporating in our own program. And what we've heard as well is, when you do a session on negotiation, for example, you could potentially either invite, the entrepreneur's partner or family or whoever else can be in the room to participate in this, to really understand the journey that the entrepreneur is going through. And that happens a lot with female entrepreneurs if they don't have a lot of decision-making power in their own community or in their family. Having a workshop around confidence and negotiation and communication, and include the family and whoever is part of their lives, or parts of that, can be very useful for them to understand the journey that entrepreneur is going through, and to really become an enabler and a supporter of that journey for the entrepreneur. But also, every time you deliver a session, and that's really relevant for negotiation, for example, there's ways that you can kind of apply a gender lens there and say, okay, you've got negotiation for business, but this is also how the principles of negotiation and how you can apply it to your day-to-day life as well, in order to get more independence to do X, Y, Z, or in order to be able to get more time to do this. So you can always apply that little bit of a lens to any kind of topic that you talk about throughout your curriculum, because it applies to business, but a lot of them do apply as well in terms of the principles to their personal lives and how they can function better as an entrepreneur within their kind of community.
Just zipping through the few of the other ones, and you can do this to the criteria and the interviews, is really understand the technical abilities of the entrepreneur within your program, and use contextualized and multiple examples. And we do this a lot. So we will have a sort of in our pockets and in our brain several examples that we can use, and depending on the level of the entrepreneurs and what they understand of our language, their genders, what's culturally appropriate, we'll use different ones. This is really important. I don't know what you guys have found, and I'd love to hear about this, and we might raise this in the discussion a little bit later, which is we found that the best entrepreneurs that come into our programs are the ones that come through word of mouth, right? So through our entrepreneurs who've already gone through our programs, they go out there and they know other entrepreneurs who are their friends or their family, and they say they know exactly what their experience was, and then they bring in some of the best entrepreneurs. So what is in your content and how it's delivered and how it's received is really important for the entrepreneur there, but also to attract other ones because that's what they're going to be able to convey. Provide lots of access to templates, frameworks, and allow learning and understanding in people's own pace, right? And again, this, putting a gender lens on is really, really important in this case because women, I mean, I can only speak from my experience. I'm sort of so time poor and brain poor at times, depending on what's happening in my personal life, that I might not be able to understand something straight away. And people who work with me know this, like I'll often need 24 hours before I can make a really big decision, right? If there's sick children at home or my husband's on night shift continuously, it's a very different mindset for often the woman who is the primary caregiver. Any questions, comments? Conscious that Audrey and I are talking a lot in this section. So we'll zip through it. We're going so we'll look at program delivery, and you might have a great application pool, great entrepreneurs coming in, brilliant content, but you have to be able to deliver it in a really strong way that doesn't privilege different genders. Really important to create a safe environment for everyone who is within the cohort, yeah? And you would have noticed this in Singapore as well, like we allow different people to speak when they want to speak. So, one of the great things that we can do is ensure diversity in the people who are actually delivering the program content. You would have seen Aaron and I delivering content and how different that might be with Audrey and I delivering the content. And it does matter. And you can either have people of the same genders and same diversities, but, people connect with people in a different way and people will learn in a different way. And to attract different gendered groups, and for example, again, if we're looking at women, have women delivering the program, right? Create that environment. But not only that, engage and support facilitators as well. So if the education level isn't the same, if you have entrepreneurs who have experienced violence or is going through trauma, you might not necessarily have to have the facilitator or the lead person in that room having expertise in that, but have someone in that space who can look after that entrepreneur. And we've done this with our refugee and asylum seeker entrepreneurs, knowing that they're going through a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, that a lot of them are living with post-traumatic stress disorder. We'll always have someone who can see this, and we make it really clear that we have people in the room to support them. Engage local matter experts and contextualize the subject matter, right? So you can actually support the entrepreneurs who are there. And then be really deliberate about creating a safe learning environment. We can see in this environment where we're all online, it is quite difficult to get engagement and seeing faces, right? But when you're there delivering it, notice and train your people who are delivering it to take cues from who they're speaking to, and to invite people to speak if they want to speak.
The other thing that will depend on whether you have an all-female cohort or a mixed cohort, and I think, Regina, you were kind of mentioning how can we incorporate more things into the existing programs versus doing one that's completely female-focused, and then it's trying to see how can you apply that psychological safety and that safe learning environment if it is a mixed cohort, and sometimes for some of the topics that might evoke a bit more emotion that people might be more hesitant to share. Maybe that is breaking out and having the female facilitator go and do a breakout session with the female founders, and then they can come back and maybe share it back with the group at a higher level that they're more comfortable with. But it's just how to how to try to create that safe environment, knowing who's in the room and the topic that you're delivering and the objectives that you're trying to get them to achieve, and making sure that they're there and able to take in the information and feel empowered and comfortable to communicate as well. So
yeah. And just the last couple of ones is, remember that diversity doesn't naturally mean inclusion. So you might have a diverse cohort and you might have a diverse team of people facilitating it. What's really important is to make sure that people's voices are heard. So especially in a mixed cohort, really ensure that there's space and there's invitation for everyone to participate. You can be really clear at the start, saying that we will invite everyone to speak, and we notice that in general females won't speak up when it's a mixed cohort. As soon as you name that, it changes the dynamic as well. So that there's some things to consider. Then we come down to facilitators and mentors, and a really important one. It is really hard to get really good facilitators and mentors, especially if you've got a really strong program. You often want your facilitators and mentors to have all the experience in the world, and they become your brand, right? So we acknowledge it's really, really difficult to get really good facilitators and mentors, but they make your program in many cases. And the role of the facilitator and mentor is really, really critical. And we see this, and we're very deliberate about this, even in this environment. We are trying to facilitate, but there's a natural power dynamic, isn't there? Because you're seeing us deliver content when really we know there's so much rich knowledge and examples within everyone on this call and everyone within the wider cohort. And just naming that and acknowledging that and inviting everyone to speak is really important as well. So you can have a really great group of facilitators and mentors and make sure that they're really diverse, but also make sure that they are trained and they're aware of your intentions and your objectives around gender, right? So they might never have, some facilitators might go to a number of programs and they might not be able to communicate in the way and the style that you know is going to create a safe and inclusive environment. So do invest in training them and getting them on board and getting them to understand how you feel the facilitation process should be in each of the programs. Again, consider power dynamics when matching different or same genders. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but sometimes it might. And again, this is a process of being really deliberate about understanding the entrepreneur and understanding the context around them and what's important to them, and same with the mentor and the facilitator. And have regular check-ins. We do this as well. When we set up a mentorship relationship, we then sort of step away, but then we'll have sort of, as much as we can, mutual check-ins to make sure that there aren't those negative power dynamics, because as all of us will probably know, the power of a really good mentor lasts way beyond the program, right? And it's often a key attribution to the success of the entrepreneur. So the last one, creating access to funding. So those of us who are really lucky and are able to provide access to funding for our entrepreneurs, it's gold, right? I think we all know that when the entrepreneurs have funding, they can scale their ventures so much faster, but it's a real challenge for a lot of them. So creating access to funding isn't just about us being able to provide funding to the entrepreneurs, but as intermediaries, we are really powerful because we're often a conduit to where they can access funding. But again, gender plays a big role in who gets access to this funding. And as we know, and in the investment space as well, to this day, investors tend to prefer people who don't look like Audrey and me, who are pretty opposite to us. The other thing to consider is in a lot of the communities that we work in, and perhaps that you do, that women aren't allowed to control their finances, or they simply don't have, they're legally not allowed to hold bank accounts, which what we find in some of our communities. So, and in addition to that, even if they do have both of those privileges as such, they are not the person in their family or their community who can make the financial decisions, right? And in adding to that, they might have poor financial literacy as well. So a few questions to ask before we go into strategies is, really understand who has those decision-making rights in relation to finances. and understand the level of financial literacy within your entrepreneurs, whether they're male or they're female, and really consider, and we do this as well, is the role that culture and religion plays in making financial decisions and how that may affect your entrepreneur. And then we can apply some strategies, right? So what are some creative approaches to ensure funds are accessible to all genders? We talked about this before, which is if they don't have access to a bank account, one of the things you can do if you can facilitate access to funding is if your venture needs the funding to purchase equipment, for example, can you enter into a relationship with the supplier and actually transfer the funds to the supplier, the entrepreneur gets what they need, and you're bypassing the whole roadblock of them having access to a bank account or access to the funding. Work with them. If they are facing these barriers, they'll often know what solutions would work for them. Provide additional support to those who have financial literacy. And this comes back to what Audrey, you were saying before, is you might not have to have a whole new program, but you might be able to provide certain masterclasses or core programs to support in financial literacy, which will make them more, presentable and to investors and donors when you can match them up to them. And the last one is incentives to the financial decision makers. And we've tried this for our female program where women might not be the decision makers in whether they can even enter into the program, and we think we might be able to use this when they don't have the decision-making rights to the finances, which is incentivize whoever in the community is making those financial decisions for them, right? Again, sometimes it's difficult to change the whole system, but how can you create allies? So invite families and invite community members to sessions before the accelerator so they can meet you. See what's working for them, what is going to get buy-in from them to then support the entrepreneur who will potentially get access to this funding. So there's some of the things that we can apply.
And again, if you do have a mixed gender, there might be sessions that are more relevant to women if we actually look at how they're experiencing the program to potentially the male founders. So I know I was talking to an intermediary in Cambodia, and for them it's their female founders, I think less than 1% of female businesses are actually registered, so are allowed to have then a bank account and actually engage in any kind of transaction. So a big part of their program on the side is to help every single one of those businesses go through the really tedious process, from what I can understand, of actually registering and transitioning from the informal to the formal economy. So again, that's one of those things when you look at your cohort as a whole, that might be not be needed by everyone or even the majority, but that's something that's crucial for those female entrepreneurs that just don't have access to those same kind of infrastructures before the program to be able to set up their business in the right way to be able to receive funding and grow.
So that is a lot of information, and believe it or not, that is a summary of, we didn't include everything we had because we knew we were going to be time constrained, but and this is the complexity of it, right? There's so many different elements to consider, and there's so many different things that you can do, and then you add that level of context and where you are, and we understand that, but we wanted to cover the things that are really surfacing as a lot of people are talking about, and a lot of strategies that we've suggested have been tried and tested by us or other people we're speaking to. So enough from us. We'd love to spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes to understand. Five. Audrey's the time person today. How did all that resonate with you? And if that has, and Hien, you didn't get the opportunity to speak before, and Kazi, would love to hear from you. Did it resonate? Did some of the strategies something that you might try, or are there additional problems that you're facing that we haven't covered?
Oh. Thanks, Shankilita. She's had to leave us.
Oh, okay, no problem. No. Will, did you have anything?
Look, I think there's lots of it that we in our work at Second Muse would benefit from trying. Absolutely. I think part of the tension for me is we're doing. Well, no, that's not true. I think there's a. I think the question that we're grappling with is how can we build design in gender lens into our program design processes, because that's a lot of what we're doing. And I think for us, it's been a downstream consideration for too long. So yeah, I think that's the question that we're grappling with regard to gender at the moment. But I think in terms of stuff that we would like to try, I think, look, any and all of the things that you've shared, I think are important for us to try. I think particularly the stuff about, I think building a gender lens into curriculum. I think that's because lots of our programs are run for development actors, there isn't necessarily the scope within the design to say, make it female only. And so I think the question then becomes, and if you're dealing with, particularly with more established businesses and focusing on raising funds and getting them into seed rounds and so on, how can you address the issues in their supply chains? And I think building a gender lens into curriculum is one of the ways to do that. So yeah, it would be, that's the area where I would like to see Second focus its efforts, as well as the program design. So.
Thanks, Will. And we acknowledge that it has been a lot of content that was just thrown at you, and that's just the format of the webinar, and especially this first webinar, because there was a lot to get through. But again, take the time to digest this. We'll make the slides available to you to go back through all of this as well. And then if you do want to follow up in one-on-one sessions to dive deeper into how this particularly can get contextualized for you, we're more than happy to have those one-on-ones. You can reach out to us. And then also we have the seminar as well that will be coming up in, I think, a month. I think we have the webinar on organizations next, and then we have a seminar where we can really discuss all of them together, and really then it will be, all the power will be over to you to really get the most value out of the concepts that we've just discussed. So
yeah, great. So just really quickly, the key takeaways, obviously we covered a lot of those strategies, and there's a lot more, and we'd love to hear from you if there's anything particular you'd like to focus on. And you have access to both Audrey and myself to help you with that, and we'll send you an email about that. But the three key takeaways, I guess, what is your objective? What's your gender objective? Is it a number? Is it a quota? Is it a mandate? Or is it a consideration for your organization? And think about, and you might have multiple, as we do, right? And then also consider that applying a gender lens is really seeing the issues through the eyes of different genders. And you can do this in a really fun way, and you can do this by yourself. And that's how you can be deliberate about understanding the different power dynamics and who things are privileging or not. And then with all the strategies that we've talked about, some of them are going to be quick and easy, and some of them might take a lot of resource, and just, accept that and really explore that within your team and your organization to see what's applicable for you. And the next steps, as we've mentioned, did you want to cover this part?
Yeah, so just as we mentioned, there are one-on-ones available to you. I think you have 3 or 4, I'll just have to check, that you can have throughout this whole thematic. So if you want to flesh out a couple of the strategies that we've spoken about today and look at how you could implement them within your context, please do contact us, Manita or I, by Slack or by email. The next on the Gender and Power calendar is we have our second webinar on the 3rd of April, so in a few weeks, and that's all about exploring gender and power within your organization this time. So that's your board, your core team, your policies, your culture, all those great things. And then you have your first seminar on the 17th of April, which is a couple of weeks after that, and that's when it will be just a facilitated group discussion around all of what we've discussed in program and organization, identifying potentially extra issues that have popped up, and also discussing strategies you might have decided to implement, or just brainstorm some strategies for specific issues that are occurring in your environment with the rest of the group.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if no one else has any comments, understand, like, with 3 minutes, we made it with 3 minutes to spare.
Thanks, Kamal. Thanks for the message.
Would love to see everyone's face just before we leave. Can we do a quick show?
Oh, thanks, Agnia. No, everyone else is.
Wonderful. Yeah. Look, thanks everyone. We know it was like an hour and a half is a long time, and I probably spoke really fast, as did Audrey, but really appreciate it. And we'll see you in a few weeks, if not before, over email.
Great. Thanks, Audrey. Thanks,
Kathy, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.